Thank you. So here's a slide of the subject property in blue on the right side, and on the left is the community plan. The land use destination is medium density residential 2. And this current zoning is RD 1.5. So I've provided some images of the actual subject property just for your consideration. This is on Paloma looking north straight into the front courtyard. Oops, I'll get used to this. This is looking northeast, so we're on Paloma, like at the corner of Paloma and Speedway. Looking at the edge, kind of on the left is Speedway. Oh, you know what? I'm going to use, let's see, I'll be aiming at this. I'll get there. Sorry, everyone.
He's blinded.
So, as you can see, these are images of the subject property. And this is on Dudley. And this is looking north on Speedway. So that's the actual front of the building as Speedway going north-south. So building and safety appeals, just want to walk through some of what we're really looking at. Building and safety has made a determination on appeal May 16th of 2018. That was appealed to the director and it was filed on May 31st of 18. The director delegated it to the zoning administrator, myself, and my decision came out on January 3rd of this year, and that was further appealable, and hence it's in front of you on appeal. An appeal of the Department of Building Safety appeal concerning the issuance of a certificate of occupancy dated, hold on tight, August 25 of 1967 for a 58-unit apartment house and rely on the C of O to prohibit short-term rentals, transient occupancy hotel in an existing 4-story residential building on the subject property. So we're literally looking at the issuance of a C of O from 1967. I've prepared some chronology for you just to get you some of the setting. The building was built in 2 phases. It was built, the first building was built in 1913, and it was so successful that by the following year they embarked on doing a second twin building. So it's one property, or one 58-unit building that's connected. Let me try that again. There's 2 29-unit buildings connected to make the 58-unit total. The subject property was located in the city of Venice before it was consolidated with the city of Los Angeles in 1925. In 1964, the subject building was determined to be substandard condition by building and safety, and a notice of substandard residential building was recorded with the county recorder. And that becomes important because that triggered them to come back and take care of their building. So they pulled a permit in 1965 to repair that work. In 67, the certificate of occupancy was issued. In 1973, an ordinance came through that changed the zoning that was at that point R5 down to RD 1.5. And the last piece in the chronology is that in 1992, the city adopted the transient occupancy residential structures ordinance, or what we would commonly refer to as the TORS ordinance, which was the first time that we had length of stays governed by the planning code. So here's the building permit history. Again, as I said, 1913 it was built, and then the second phase in 16. In 1933, after the consolidation, was the first permit issued by the city of Los Angeles on the subject property. There was some sort of, I believe it was earthquake damage they were repairing. Anyway, there was a permit in 33, 36, 40, 53, and all of those referred to it as an apartment or an apartment house. So there's never been any kind of C of O or permits that referred to it as anything but an apartment house. The 1965 is bolded there for you because that's the permit where they were doing the response to the order to comply / substandard building, and in 67 the subject C of O came out. And then this is the substandard code. I guess, is that large enough to read? Do you want me to read it to? Okay. So basically, if you're substandard and you're any kind of menace to life and limb, then you have to bring it to conform with the code regulations at the time that the substandard occurs. So hence, though it was built much earlier, by 1964 you had to bring it up to standards. And hence the 1965 permit that then attempted to do that. This is an image of the 1965 permit. What I'd like to point out, which I think is kind of obvious, is here is the existing use at 55 units. I'm sorry, 58 units. says that the future use is going to be the same. The existing zoning at the time was R5, which is, it's relevant, we'll bring it up later though. And here it tells why they're doing the work, that they're responding to that order from 64. And this is the C of O itself, which is responding directly to the work being accomplished based on the permit that was issued. And it gives you a 58-unit apartment, it's 4 stories, there's the permit that we were just talking about, and it shows it as an H2 occupancy. The use of the subject building is listed on there as a 58-unit apartment house on CVO, and of course the H2 occupancy. To help clarify for everyone in the room, including the commissioners, I just threw in some brief commentary on the H1, 2, 3, and 4. H2 is an apartment house. H3 is a hotel, which it was not, shown as H2, and an apartment hotel was H4. The subject building was constructed with 58 dwelling units and no guest room.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Margulies. There seems to be, do you need some help? Is there something, an announcement you'd like to make?
Trying not to interrupt, ma'am, but I will take a few moments. Owner of a black Tesla, please see me outside. Black Tesla who's parked.
I'd like to be the owner of a black Tesla.
Please see me outside.
I think it's a lottery.
I don't see anybody standing up. If somebody doesn't stand up, the car will be towed.
Oh. Really? Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption, thank you.
Based on the permitting history and the zoning code definition, the subject building has always been an apartment house. There are no building permits or certificates of occupancy available or provided to validate the claim. The subject building operated with short-term rentals or as a transient occupancy. So I'm going to go through slide by slide, point by point, the appellant's points. So his first point is that the Ellison is a qualified historic building pursuant to the California Historic Building Code, and therefore its historical use is preserved. I want to just go back and make sure that the one point I made didn't get lost. It wasn't until 1992, when the TORS ordinance came through, that we had a limitation on how long you had to stay. Prior to that, you could rent it shorter term, but after that, it's 30 days or longer to be an apartment house. Otherwise, you're a hotel transient. Okay? Okay. So, with that said, he's saying he had that right prior to this time, and so by going to the CHBC, he had the rights to go back to, and had some sort of historic use preserved. The CHBC does not determine allowable land uses in the zone. It does not. The CHBC references in its actual language the term use, and it refers to occupancy and life safety issues, not the underlying zoning provisions. What really does govern is the city's zoning code, and it prescribes the allowable uses in each zone. So that's my response to it. His points number 2 and number 7 are very similar. I've put them both on their own slides for clarity. The government code preserves the Ellison's short and long-term rental use by preserving Venice's land use laws, because before the consolidation, it already had laws. And then he gets into the issue of consolidation, not annexation. Consolidation did not repeal any of the ordinances under which vested rights may have accrued. No evidence in the record that the appellant has a vested right whatsoever. There was some print advertisement that was submitted from 1928. It was an advertisement to rent the Ellison apartments for nightly, weekly, or monthly rates, but that's all we have. There's no evidence whatsoever other than those print ads that were in the Christian Science Monitor between November and December of 1928. And we do not accept that. There's no ledgers, there's no receipts, there's nothing other than those print ads that even discuss the fact that it was offered. But the City of Venice ordinance provided by the applicant, the appellant, sorry, and the City of Los Angeles zoning code prior to 92 was in fact silent on the length of stay. The City of Los Angeles, though, has the right to adopt future zoning ordinances. So the argument is that prior to that point, in 92, there were no limits on how long, and it wasn't that there was a limit of any kind, length of stay addressed in Venice, the city prior to consolidation. His argument is that those were preserved, but it was silent. It didn't offer them, it didn't prohibit them. So during the consolidation, the fact that though certain ordinances from the prior cities were repealed just by the consolidation, the zoning ordinances were not. But the city preserves the right to, in fact, adopt future zoning ordinances. My final bullet on that. The Ellison's vested right to rent apartment units on short and long-term basis was grandfathered in. Nowhere in the record has the appellant demonstrated that they were granted legal non-conforming use status as a hotel. A completely separate part of the code says if you have any, and we're not capitulating that they had any, but if you have non-conforming rights, if you discontinue the use of those non-conforming rights for over a year, you will lose them. So it's pretty wordy, but there's the slide. I think you guys can digest that. But basically, if you've discontinued use for a year, you've lost the non-conforming right, if it had existed. The appellant's arguments regarding vested rights, which are made in the record, are to health and safety and the building code. But as I started my opening comments, the scope that we're here for, the limited scope, is for, in 1226K, is did building safety error abuse its authority in interpreting the zoning code. Making reference to the health and safety code and the building code are not before us. Additionally, to try to address some of the non-conforming potential, I did additional research to find out if anyone had done any investigation or inspections of the property to see if it ever had any evidence whatsoever that it was anything other than an apartment house. HCID, the Housing and Community Investment Department, has a systematic code enforcement program. It's known as the, I guess, SCUP, I'm not sure how everyone refers to it. Excuse me? SCAP, there we go, for the record, SCAP. So, after doing that research, I threw some bullets together for everyone to digest. Periodic inspections have occurred at the Ellison since 2001. The Ellison has consistently paid fees for this inspection, which the fee only applies to rental dwelling units. If it was short-term rentals or a hotel, those fees would not have been applied to it. Each inspection had no reference whatsoever to short-term rentals. Then, in January of 2015, HCID was alerted that the Ellison had started to rent on a short-term basis. Community members, some complaint came in, what have you. In February of 2015, HCID issued orders to comply, and those orders actually are not resolved to date. They're partially related to today's action, I believe. The appellant's point number 4 and 8 are really identical, so I merged them into one. Prohibiting short-term rentals in Venice's coastal zone violates the California Coastal Act.